terrorism.
Roisin McAliskey remained silent throughout virtually all her time in Castlereagh. She later wrote an account of her alleged experience. As well as the claims of verbal abuse and threats of assault, there was a more serious allegation that 2 days after her arrest, the interrogating officers were beginning to suggest that if she didn't cooperate with them, she'd be sorry.
On the Friday morning, Mr. A said that if I did not sign the statement, Mr. B was working on a package deal for me and that the statement was the lesser of two evils. Mr. A said that Mr. B had taken a few days' holiday to get me a present, and if I hadn't signed by the time he returned, I would be unwrapping the present for the next 2 years. Before I was taken out of the interrogation centre to be arrested by detectives from New Scotland Yard, Mr. C came into the holding cell and said I had one final chance. If I signed the statement, they would pull the warrant. I refused to sign.
The RUC was asked to comment on those allegations. It declined to provide a spokesperson, but issued this statement.
A number of sets of fingerprints were taken as part of the Thiepval investigation, including those of Miss McAliskey, and checked routinely against fingerprints from outstanding terrorist crimes held by New Scotland Yard.
The statement said that on November the 24th, Scotland Yard told Castlereagh a match had been made with prints taken in the Osnabrück inquiry. The statement said the Germans had then initiated the extradition warrant.
German interest in Miss McAliskey came about through routine police procedures. The RUC rejects totally any suggestion made by Miss McAliskey's mother to UTV that extradition was a ploy to put pressure on her daughter to cooperate in the Thiepval bombing inquiry.
After 6 days in Castlereagh, McAliskey was moved to London, initially to Holloway Women's Prison. After her security classification was upgraded by the then Home Secretary Michael Howard to exceptional risk category A, she was transferred to the all-male Belmarsh high security jail.
Roisin found herself in an all-male prison with no access to anybody, still not sure what was actually happening to her, except she was en route to Germany. The cell she was put in was filthy. Now, bearing in mind that when all of this happened, Roisin was on her way to the hospital because she was in the early stages of pregnancy and she was having serious difficulty keeping food in her stomach. That was her basic problem. The authorities were aware of that. They were aware of what the problem was, and yet she was placed in a cell that was obviously used by somebody on some kind of dirt protest. The cell she was put in was filthy. The bedding was soiled and stained. Now, obviously, it wasn't simply a dirt factor. This was that some unknown meal had been here in this prison before her. His excrement was still there, as a result of which she just was now, at a very practical level, vomiting almost incessantly.
Amid public disquiet about the conditions of McAliskey's detention, Amnesty International intervened and she was transferred back to Holloway. Her case also attracted the interest of civil rights activist Paul May, who has chaired campaigns for the release of the Birmingham 6 and the Bridgewater 3.
Wholly absurd level of what was called security, but a not very well pregnant 5'1" woman was subject to the kind of security that no female prisoner in this country has ever undergone. And that would include such notorious prisoners as Myra Hindley, as Rosemary West.
If security at Belmarsh was tight, the regime in Holloway was no less stringent. McAliskey was strip-searched regularly. 75 times, said the Home Office. More than 110 claimed her family. With the pregnancy nearing its end, McAliskey's lawyers fought a series of legal battles. First to win assurances that their client wouldn't be shackled during labour, Then that the prison authorities wouldn't wait until the advanced stages of labour before transferring her to the nearby Whittington Hospital for the birth.
The main fear had been that she would go into premature delivery. And the obstetrician at the Whittington confirmed that at the end of the pregnancy, we were in the most bizarre situation, almost of mind over matter, was that Roisin would not and could not go into labour. And the hospital authorities were very clear that if they did not get her out of that prison with time to relax, that her whole body would not actually let go of the baby, and that she was now in serious danger of the child being damaged. Now that took a 2-day High Court battle, and it wasn't that people didn't know. I mean, that's the bit that angers me most. It wasn't at any point that any of those people said that evidence is not correct. We don't believe that's going to happen. The underlying point at every aspect of it was almost, this is not a woman, this is not a human being, this is not a person. This is an Irish Republican suspected, not even charged, but suspected of being a member of the IRA. This person does not have the status of a dog.
After the birth, experts at the Whittington recommended that McAliskey be moved to a psychiatric hospital outside London. It took bail of almost £200,000 to secure that transfer. She and the child remain there, awaiting the final decision on her extradition. Quebec barracks had been attacked before, in 1989, and was a relatively soft target, with few of the tight security measures employed at security installations in Northern Ireland. Within hours of the attack, the German Federal Police, the BKA, searched this holiday home in Sandhattan, 60 miles to the north, where it's believed the IRA had prepared the mortars. It subsequently transpired that Michael Dixon, a former British soldier now wanted for questioning about the attack, had rented the house in his own name. In preliminary proceedings, the Germans named 4 suspects. Dixon, who was last spotted in Portadown in July of 1996 and who hasn't been seen since. Local actor James Corey, who beat extradition in the Republic and is still living there. The Gardaí are understood to be currently investigating whether there's enough evidence to try him in the south on charges linked to Osnabrück. The third suspect was Leonard Hardy, who was suspected of involvement in the last Osnabrück bombing in '89, but whom the Germans appear to have made no serious effort to track this time round. And Roisin McAliskey, who the Germans insist was the woman suspect who told locals her name was Beth O'Donnell. The evidence, the Germans say, proves that Roisin McAliskey is Beth O'Donnell is twofold. A fingerprint, they say, is hers, found on a cigarette wrapper in a bin outside the holiday home, and an identification of her by the landlord of the holiday home, Manfred Schmidt, from a selection of photographs shown to him by the German police. He's the chief prosecution witness, but his evidence has been devalued by 2 facts. The first, that he initially identified another suspect as Beth before picking out McAliskey. The second, that he's since gone on German television to apparently say he was unable to positively identify anyone from the folders of photographs. McAliskey's London solicitor says the case would never stand up in a British court.
If you had a fingerprint on a fixed object, a door frame or a fixed object within a house, that of course would be compelling evidence that someone had been there. If you had a fingerprint on something that could be removed and discarded without ever being appreciated where or when, then that evidence does not support evidence of presence. Indeed, in Northern Ireland itself, it has been ruled by the Court of Appeal as being no proof of presence.